One of the great contributions of the internet has been it is the democratization of extremism. An unintended consequence of putting the single most powerful communication tool in human history in the hands of individuals is that a lot of people are taking advantage of it to spread hate. This is the heart of modern anti-Semitism, post-Holocaust.
Hello, my name is Jacques Berlinerblau of Georgetown University, and you've just clicked into Faith Complex, a dialogue about the entanglement of religion and politics. Today I have the pleasure of chatting with Mr. David Friedman, Regional Director of the Anti-Defamation League right here in Washington, D.C. Mr. Friedman, welcome to Faith Complex.
Great to see you. Please call me David.
David, the ADL has been combating anti-Semitism since 1913. It seems to me that in the wake of the Madoff scandal and the global economic crisis, you've had some more to combat?
Yeah, I mean, basically, who would think 65 years after the Holocaust that we would be fighting more, not less, anti-Semitism?
Fascinating. Now, your organization recently conducted a very interesting survey in Europe, and some of the findings surprised many of us. Can you tell us about those findings?
I think the two most startling, troubling findings were this. One, that roughly half of the Europeans surveyed felt that Jews were disloyal to their country. And the second, roughly a third, felt that Jews had too much power and control in business and finance.
So we see some of the classic rudiments of anti-Semitic thought, the dual loyalty charge,
Right.
And the second idea that Jews have disproportional control of the means of power within a society. So things
Absolutely
aren't changing.
right. And what's so amazing is when you translate those statistics into numbers, you're talking millions of Europeans holding those classic anti-Jewish beliefs.
Now, part of the survey was conducted between December and January of 2008 and 2009. Is it possible that the Gaza war might have impacted public opinion?
Possible, but unlikely. But there was something that turned up 2 years ago when we did a similar study that really was quite troubling. In that study, and then again this time, we found that there were a great many Europeans who hated Israel in the past and then would hate Jews. Now we are seeing about 25% who come to anti-Semitism first by hating Israel.
So the anti-Zionism is the prelude to the anti-Semitism.
In many cases it is.
Versa. Fascinating. Now, many in the Jewish community were rather chagrined by what they saw as an unusual emphasis on Bernie Madoff's Jewish ancestry. Do you find the accusation warranted?
No, I don't think that you can separate the fact that Bernie Madoff went after people within the Jewish world. That was part of the story. Most of the newspapers, most of the major broadcast networks, they only mention someone's ethnicity, religion, race, if it's directly relevant to the story.
And here it was relevant
I
to
think
the
it
story.
was.
Because the victims were Jewish.
The victims were, absolutely.
I see. Okay, let me ask you this. Your organization released a fabulous report on what we might call cyber anti-Semitism. Of the report, what did you find most interesting there?
We see the convergence of three major trends, particularly like if you look at Madoff. You see, on one hand, the rise globally of anti-Semitism. Two, you see the centrality of conspiracies about Jews. Right. And the third, the internet is becoming a major force in distributing, promoting anti-Semitism. This is the heart of modern anti-Semitism, post-Holocaust.
Do a little profiling for us, okay? Give us a cyber profile of an anti-Semitic troll. Does this person live in a yurt or a remote mountain village or a basement in Queens? Is it a man or is it a woman? PC or Mac? What is it? Tell us about this person.
I think it would have been very easy 20 years ago to do a profile. I don't think it's the case anymore. Today, one of the great contributions, if you can call great in this sense, of the internet has been it is the democratization of extremism. Look at the new phenomenon that has happened. Over the last couple of years, virtually every new means of communication, whether it's blogging, texting, have been corrupted and used by extremists to promote their message. Now, The most telling in the recent economic crisis was the use of the post-a-comment sections of newspapers. They're trying to be interactive. They did not anticipate that the people who would want to interact are often people with an agenda.
How do you deal with commenters? Some say the problem is anonymity. The commenters are anonymous, so they say things they would never dare say in public or in the workplace. Do you think the problem is anonymity?
Yeah, I think actually that is, in some ways, the big problem. People are saying and doing things that they wouldn't do face-to-face. On the other hand, as long as the internet is the internet, you're going to have people at long distance being able to do things. I think that law enforcement or other parts of society need to intervene.
Do you have any worries about the civil liberties hit that is going to result if we start tracking down anonymous commenters on boards, or do you feel that the ends justify the means?
Well, I think, first of all, people do not have a First Amendment right to post a comment. That's the discretion of the newspaper. If we're talking about newspapers, they certainly can get the provider to flag, the site to flag an individual comment.
Our research division here did a little experiment. We went on to Google and we typed in Jew, so that would be, let me see, J-E-W. We typed it in, we pressed return, and oh my God, many of the websites that originally came up were these hardcore extremist Judeophobic websites. And a disclaimer from the Google folks saying that this was generated by some sort of logarithm and it does not reflect their personal views on the issue. We found that to be absolutely astonishing. What do you make of all of that? What are we seeing when we see this explosion of anti-Semitic websites popping up in cyberspace?
Well, this is one of the most troubling parts of the last 10 years. One, you have an increasing willingness on the part of individuals, anonymously, to express their hatred of Jews. Two, because they are doing more of it, it's more visible, and therefore people are deciding it's more acceptable. And this is really kind of feeding itself. An unintended consequence of putting the single most powerful communication tool in human history in the hands of individuals is that a lot of people are taking advantage of it to spread hate.
This explosion of anti-Semitic comments and extremist websites, we see this. Does this indicate an actual increase in anti-Semitism in the population writ large, or does it just point to a few individuals that have found a medium that permits them to magnify their insanity? What would you say it is?
I think that you have to look at the sheer volume to question whether it's only a few individuals. Certainly there are people who devote 24/7 to spreading, lies and hatred of Jews. But at the same time, it's coming from so many different sources. It's government-sponsored, it's sponsored by extremist groups, organized extremist groups, hate groups. So it's coming from too many places for it to be, only seen as an aberration.
Right. Let's say an owner of a website comes to the ADL for sage advice and they say, tell us what we can do. We are plagued by these Judeophobic remarks. Can you outline for us a plan of action? What would the plan of action be?
Well, if the problem is the post-a-comment, one radical solution is not to include post-a-comment.
Another possibility is rigorously scrubbing the anti-Semitic and racist comments and homophobic comments out of there, but that's extremely expensive.
It's a business equation to decide we don't want to be associated with those values on our website, and you got to clean them off. If you are willing to put something up that gives people the opportunity to instantly make anti-Semitic comments, you have to be willing to take the responsibility. We dealt with this issue 20 years ago when online bulletin boards first appeared and providers said, it's their problem. They put the stuff up. It's not ours to fix it. None of them would now say that.
So the provider is accountable.
I believe ultimately they're accountable, just as anyone who's purveying a product has to answer ultimately to the public.
We've been speaking to Mr. David Friedman, Regional Director of the Anti-Defamation League in Washington. Mr. Friedman, thank you so much for appearing on The Faith Complex.
My pleasure, Doc.